This is my family. This is my 2 wives and most of my family. But this is about the time things turned with Warren. This was the beginning of the end of my family. After they gave me the edict, I gathered my family together. They all started to cry, and they said, why? Why is this happening to us? We haven't done anything wrong. It absolutely shattered me. I can't even explain the pain. I just wanted to die. It's embarrassing to admit that I could be deceived so much. Warren deceived the people right from the start. He was a monster. My name is Wallace Jeffs. I am a half-brother of Warren Jeffs.
Nevada police have arrested fugitive polygamous leader Warren Jeffs.
I was born and raised in this criminal organization. Some call it a church, I call it a criminal organization.
The FBI confirms the FLDS leader was taken into custody. He's been on the FBI's 10 most wanted list since May.
The FLDS is called the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saint Church. They believe that if you don't live polygamy or plural marriage, you cannot attain salvation. My father, Rowland Jeffs, was the prophet of the church beginning in 1986 until he died. My mother was his 4th wife of 85 that he had before he died. This is the big house my father built back in '69 where we all moved together. I lived with Warren and 50 other brothers and sisters with 8 mothers. I'm sure everybody thought it was a pretty normal family, but it was anything but normal. Nobody would have known what was really going on in here, especially with Warren. To be the son of a prophet was a huge deal. You're expected to live a very clean, wholesome, pure life. My father, he said Warren is a very special person. He was brought here for a very specific reason by God, and you were expected to revere him. My father told me that Warren would be the next prophet. He was the example to follow. But yet I knew he wasn't. I knew he was doing wrong things. I could see it. I saw him doing wrong things. When we were living together in the big home, we had fruit trees. And my father had made a decree that we didn't pick any fruit off the trees. We could have them if they fell on the ground, but we couldn't pick them. But Warren would do it. We saw him do it many times. He did it with us. And whenever we did it, he would hurry up and eat his apple, run and tell my dad, and my dad would punish us. But Warren would never get punished for it. I would tell on him, but nothing ever happened. We would tell, and they would just say, forget about it, don't worry about it, I'll handle it. But I never saw him ever get punished for anything he did, ever. He could do no wrong. It was one summer, I was 14 years old. We were told to put a fence around the compound. My father told all of us sons to work on building this fence. And he chose Warren to be the foreman of it or the leader of it. He loved that power and he loved that authority, but he took it to another level. I remember I was nailing some boards up to the fence, and Warren came over and said, "You're doing it wrong. You're putting the nails in the wrong angle."
I'm doing it exactly the way you told me to do it.
He says, "You screwed this up, and I'm gonna beat the out of you." And I remember he just came running at me. And he started kicking me. Just kicking and kicking and kicking me while I was down. "You're lazy, you're stupid, you can't do anything right." And just basically kicked the out of me. I felt belittled and worthless. This fence was supposed to keep evil out from our home. Little did they know there was more evil in the home than out of it. Warren was made principal of the school at 17, and that's where he really started to gain power. Well, I was very shocked. I thought, why in the world would they choose a 17-year-old boy to be the principal of the school? And the only answer I got was that he was put there because he was this chosen vessel. I hated school because Warren was so iron-handed. He ran the school very authoritatively. He wanted everybody to know things were going to be done his way. He came up with a dress code that all of the students had to adhere to, and one of them was nothing flashy. I had a girl I liked in school, and I wanted to be flashy to her, so I went and got a yellow shirt. I just thought I was the stuff, you know. And he said, "What are you doing? Where'd you get that shirt? You know that's wrong, right?"
You, know the rule about flashy clothes.
I said, "Yeah." He said, "Take it off." I said, "No, I won't." He said, "Take it off." And I said, "No, I won't." Took the shirt and started whipping me with it. Yelling and screaming, saying what an evil, wicked boy I was. I was gonna go to hell. Just made a fool out of me. He had full authority to do whatever he wanted in the school, and nobody really questioned him because we weren't supposed to. Warren became very, very popular and very, very influential with the people. He was teaching their children, and the children looked up to him. This was the beginning of his reign of terror. This is where it all started.
I don't know how many other kids he did this to. I don't know. But I do know that day I saw him for what he really was, and he was a monster.
Warren loved power. Power was an aphrodisiac to him. The more power he got, the more he became aggressive toward women. When Warren was the principal of the school, he would really pick on the girls. And he would give you a test that he knew you would fail, so he could pull them in his office and talk to them. It was very, very hush and secret. Warren would call them into his office. He would lock the door, and he did it all the time. He was constantly calling people to his office in private interviews. I thought it was very strange that it was all so secretive. Something's really weird. We'd heard rumors that he would ask them to lift their skirt, to show their breasts, to let him feel them. He would spank them with a ruler. When I heard that, I thought, holy crap. I knew something was wrong.
This is our yearbook. You know, I really looked forward to getting these every year because of all the memories that was created in that school. It's supposed to be a book full of happy memories, but for me, it's a book full of pain. Right there I am in first grade. Just a little boy that with a smile on his face, but that's not the truth. I remember going to our Sunday school. It was a normal day. I remember I was sitting at a desk, coloring, drawing pictures, and I see the door, I see it open up very slowly, and I see Warren standing there in the doorway. He just walks into the room quietly, not a word spoken, walks right up to me and grabs my hand. And all I do is I stand up, blindly follow him. Right out of the classroom, into the hallway, not knowing what's going on, leading me right into this bathroom, right down the hall, and him closing the door. And then he would begin to tell me, this is how you're going to become a man. This is God's will. If you don't do what I say, you're going against God and you're going to burn in hell for this. And then he began to molest me. And he would just walk me back down the hall and back into the classroom and set me back down in my chair. And he would walk right back out. It happened several more times after, and it was the same every single time. The door would open and I knew it was my turn. I knew that he was coming to get me. I could never say anything because me saying those things against him, it's blasphemy against the church. All I've ever heard is perfect obedience, perfect faith. Perfect obedience, perfect faith. So I never once talked about this with anyone, not even my own siblings, not my parents or anyone. I never talked about this. I felt like that if I talked about it, then I felt like that I was turning my back on God. And there he is, a wolf in his sheep's clothing. Ugh, I don't even like to look at him. It's hard. There was a lot of these kids that absolutely idolized him and looked up to him in every way. And every one of them had nothing but respect and trust for Warren, but behind closed doors, he was a monster and a pedophile.
I have received new words from God. Words about how we can grow closer to Him.
I could have started telling the people that I thought it was bogus, but I knew that by doing that, I would have been cast out. So I chose to just be quiet, just waiting to see what Warren was going to do. I actually prayed to God to just take me. I just wanted to die.
I have received new words from God. Words about how we can grow closer to Him.
When Warren took over, I was overwhelmed with fear. Once he had full control and power over the church, he had free reins to do whatever he felt.
I knew things were not going to go well. And it was a foreboding feeling of disaster. He started telling the people that media had to be cut out.
Outside influences have been plaguing this church.
People could no longer watch TV, no longer listen to the radio. He called the media Satan's tool to deceive people.
We were no longer allowed to have any affiliation with the color red. The color red represents Satan.
He stated that the people were required to remove anything from their home that was in the image of something other than God, meaning paintings, pictures on the wall, children's toys were part of this.
This is all connected to idolatry, and you have all been sucked into the worship and honor of idols.
Warren said, nothing else should be important to you other than me. Obedience to the prophet was number one, the most important thing. If he directed anything and you didn't obey, you were damned. And I told everyone to go to their rooms and pull out any idol or anything that could be an idol and bring it to me so I could discard it. After they did it, I started going to everybody's rooms to see if a week after my father died, Warren got up, and the first thing he said is, "Leave my father's wives alone." That's all he said. And I remember thinking, why would you say that? Nobody was after my father's wives. I never suspected that he would marry them. But he started marrying them within 2 weeks after my father's death. My father had 85 wives when he passed. At least 50 Warren took to himself as wives.
When we're together, the Lord is with us.
It was against everything we were taught, that a son does not marry his mothers. Warren started doing underage marriages. He started marrying 14-year-old girls, 16-year-old girls. All of these girls would have felt very honored to marry Warren. These girls look happy because they've been led to believe that they are now married to the most holy man on earth. But what they don't realize is they're marrying the most evil man on earth. Warren had called a meeting.
John Thomas, come forward.
And in that meeting, he expelled 8 men.
You are no longer a member of the priesthood.
God says you're unworthy, so you need to leave your family and leave town. When Warren would expel a man, he was to leave town immediately. He was told not to contact his family. Warren would then reassign his wives to other men. He would just say, you belong to this man, and he would give that woman to that man. And it's just devastating. It's absolutely devastating to the children. It's devastating to the wives. But because he's the prophet, you don't question it. I didn't leave because if I did, I would have lost my family. My family was still loyal to the church because I had taught them to be. If I would have tried to take them out of the church, they would have told me, no, we're not going to go with you. And I didn't want to lose my family.
I was afraid to leave. I was literally just afraid to turn my back on something that I've known my whole life. I believed that the teachings of the church were true. I believed those were true. What I didn't believe was Warren. But I had to follow his rules. If I didn't, then I couldn't be a part of the church.
This was the beginning of the end of my family.
I vowed inside that I would do everything in my power to make sure he is stopped, that this monster is put away.
As a man in the church, you don't get to choose your family. You're given your family by the prophet. The prophet has the authority to remove that family as well as give them to you. And Warren would just expel anybody at any time for no reason. So a man is always living in fear that you have to be perfect, or you could lose your family. This is my family. This is my 2 wives and most of my family. This was a very happy time for me. I had it all going for me at this point. But this is about the time things turned with Warren. This was the beginning of the end of my family. In November of 2005, and I got a call on my cell phone from the bishop. He said, I have a message for you from the prophet Warren. I want to come and deliver it to you personally. I said, okay. Immediately I felt this sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. I knew something was bad. The bishop came in, pulled out this paper, and read what they call the revelation from Warren.
I, the Lord, am displeased with my servant Wallace Jeffs,
saying that I was not worthy of living in the church. I had committed some sin, but they didn't tell me what, and that I was to gather up my first wife and her children, leave town, and repent.
Wallace's second wife and all her children.
My second wife and her family were to go live with her father. I knew at that point Warren had expelled me from the church so that he could take my second wife, Amy, to be his wife. He had wanted her since she was in school when he was the principal. Once he became the prophet, he now had the power to take my wife away and take her to himself. I thought about refusing to leave. I actually thought about it. But if I had done that, I would have been evicted from my home. They owned the town, so they had the right to evict you and remove you, and they would do whatever they had to get you out of town. You didn't have a choice. Then I said, okay, I will comply. After they gave me the edict, I gathered my family together. Both my wives and all of my children were there.
Don't worry. It won't last long.
And I started to cry, and I said I would do everything I could to get back so that we could be a family again.
Trust me. I will fix this.
I hugged every one of my children and wives. I said I was sorry. About an hour later, Amy's brothers came and they took her.
My father stood up and said, absolutely not. You're not going to do this. You're not going to take away my family. And I'm going to take my family with me, and we're going to go ahead and leave the church. It was the hardest adjustment I've ever had to go through, trying to undo a lifetime of preachings and have to literally step outside into a world that is completely foreign to me. I'm literally walking away from everything I've ever known. My brother's wife screaming, and my brother had shot himself in the head. This was the hardest thing that I had ever done, to publicly speak out about something that hurt me so bad, that hurt my brother so bad. But stopping this monster is all I cared about. Warren never showed up to court, and by default I won.
High noon in Colorado City. Long-kept secrets of America's largest polygamous community are coming to light.
After my lawsuit, several others had finally gotten up enough courage to speak out against him.
We need your help and support to help stop Warren S. Jeffs from destroying families.
He decides who you will marry, when you will marry, which wives go with which, how many wives everyone gets.
I felt happy that I wasn't the only one standing alone going after him, but Warren denied everything to his people. He didn't want them to believe that he was this monster. He went on the run. The FBI put him on the most wanted list because of an allegation of a 12-year-old girl that had been married underage to a man in the church. This was the catalyst for Warren's undoing.
The FBI, sheriff's office, and the marshal's office were all surrounding me. It didn't matter what they said, I was not going to be swayed. There's no way he was going to do that to my children. We were taught to believe that this prophet of this church was next to God and we had to obey him. And I believe that he thought no matter what he did, it was God's will and he could get away with it.
As we first reported in our 7 o'clock hour, Nevada police have arrested fugitive polygamous leader Warren Jeffs.
The FBI confirms the FLDS leader was taken into custody after he and 2 other people were pulled over late Monday by a Nevada Highway Patrol trooper on I-15.
I saw that Warren, on the run, had finally been caught.
Authorities think that he arranged marriages between older men and underage girls.
I was absolutely shocked. I was beside myself. I cried for a while, actually. Tears of happiness, tears of relief.
It was a miracle. I was elated. I was like, this is exactly what I wanted to hear. After Warren's arrest, they had a ton of evidence that would now expose the true Warren. He was stealing money. He had child pornography on his laptop, and he was having group sex with underage girls.
It felt like almost 1,000,000 pounds had been lifted off me to know that he was going to prison.
The people of the church don't know anything about his crimes. Most of them do not even know why Warren is in prison. They don't get to look at the internet, they don't get to look at papers, they don't watch TV, they don't listen to radio. They hear rumors, but the leaders of the church tell them that if they believe any of the rumors, that they will be expelled. So Warren's power from prison was just as great as before. He would make a written statement or a revelation that he would give to the bishop, and the bishop would then give it to the people in Sunday meeting.
Revelation of the Lord, given to Warren S. Jeffs.
Warren came forth with a revelation that he was undoing all marriages of the people of the church, that they could not have sex anymore, and that nobody had the right to procreate or bring forth children.
All marital unions are hereby dissolved.
There were 15 men selected by God and himself that were deemed seed bearers, and that at Warren's direction, these men would impregnate whatever woman he chose them to impregnate.
These men will be chosen by the prophet.
I knew that Warren was capable of doing that to my daughters, that he could have assigned my daughters to men, and those men would rape them. Even from prison, all he had to do was make a phone call or send a message, and it would have happened. And when I learned that, that's when I said, no, not my girls. It's not gonna happen to my girls. My sons, who were faithful, came out to talk to me. I told my sons that I was here to get my underage children, that I was going to take them away and take them home with me. They said they don't want to go with you. I said, well, that doesn't matter. I'm going to protect my children. Go get them. They tried to convince me not to do it, to allow the children to stay. Finally, there were my daughters. They were all crying. They said, "You are not our father. You do not have the right to take us. We do not want to go." And my family was still loyal to Warren. I had taught them their whole life to be loyal to this church. I had taught them that. And I finally said, "We've got to go now. Let's go." I brought my daughters home, but they would not talk to me.
Please, look at me, girls.
I would try to talk to them about Warren and Warren's crimes. They would literally put their fingers in their ears so they didn't have to hear it. They refused to look at me in the eye. Many months after I got them, one Sunday, a friend of mine came over and I talked to the girls. I said, "Hey, we're gonna go to the park and throw the Frisbee. You wanna come?" And for the first time, they actually looked me in the eye. And then all of a sudden they said, "Yeah, maybe we do." So they came with me and we went to the park and threw the Frisbee. That was the first time I thought, well, there's hope. I have a total of 20 children by the 2 wives. 5 of my children are still in the church. They are adults. All I can do is hope they somehow find out the truth and come out on their own. My oldest boy in this picture hates me. He's still in the church. And to think of the memories we had together that were good. That he one time adored me and now he hates me. That hurts.
I still have one brother and one sister down in Colorado City. I haven't seen them in 10, 12 years. I have no idea what's going on with them. They still believe in Warren, they still follow him and everything. I guess they just don't fully understand what he's capable of and what he still continues to do. I want people to know that Warren is a monster. It's my turn to speak for those who cannot speak. Speak for those children who cannot speak. Speak for the women who are afraid. Speak for the people who are full of fear. We all have power within ourselves to stand up for ourselves and stand up for those who hurt us. If anyone...
It was a cold night in Manhattan, November 12, 2003, when the city that never sleeps felt a shiver it couldn't shake. Streetlights flickered along the deserted sidewalks of the Lower East Side, casting long, jagged shadows over the cracked pavement. A taxi hummed past, the driver's eyes momentarily catching the silhouette of a figure standing motionless in the alley, and then gone. That figure, a woman, vanished without a sound, without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a scarf tangled in the iron fence at the corner of Rivington and Ludlow. Her name was Emily Saunders, 28 years old, a rising editor at a local magazine. Known for her sharp mind, her laughter that could fill a room, and a habit of walking home late from her office, headphones in, world shut out. That night, Emily walked into the shadow of the city's underbelly, and the world would not see her again for years. The initial report filed by Officer Daniels described a possible missing person, a classification that would haunt the precinct for decades. The scanner logs that night recorded frantic calls from neighbors who thought they had glimpsed someone struggling, someone calling for help. But the city's pulse was too fast, and their voices faded into the endless static of routine crime reports. The first week was chaos painted in subtle hues of panic. Detectives combed through CCTV from nearby shops, grainy black and white footage that showed Emily walking, umbrella in hand, the glow of neon signs reflecting off puddles. But then, at the intersection of Delancey and Essex, the camera abruptly cut to static. 1 minute, she existed in motion, the next she was swallowed by the night. Interviews with friends and colleagues revealed fragments of her last days. A phone call with a source about a sensitive story, a heated argument over a deadline, a hasty text message to her roommate saying, "I'll be home soon." There is nothing to suggest she would disappear, nothing to warn of the violence that would later emerge as a stain on the city's memory. The scene of the scarf became a shrine for speculation, a dark muse for tabloids that ran headlines like "Vanishing on Ludlow Street." Who took Emily Saunders? And NYC cold case. Editor lost to shadows? But the police were restrained. They knew the city breathed 1,000 tragedies a day. This one could either be another routine missing person or something far more sinister. Detective Lena Torres, assigned to the case, described the first months as a tangle of dead ends. Every lead led to an alley of doubt. Every witness offered only half-truths. She recalled the feeling of standing over that scarf, holding it against her chest, imagining the last moments Emily might have lived, the silent terror, the sudden finality that a life could be snatched without a sound. The community rallied in subtle ways, vigil after vigil, candlelight reflections in the puddles of rain-soaked streets, but the darkness clung to the block like a living thing. For months, the investigation ran on fumes. Fingerprints from the scarf yielded nothing. The apartments surrounding the scene were canvassed, questions asked, doors knocked on, but every answer added only to the fog. People began to whisper about serial predators, about shadowy figures who watched from rooftops, about the city's own indifference. Emily's family moved to the forefront of the media spotlight, desperate for a clue, a break, a confession. Every anniversary of her disappearance became a quiet parade of grief. Photos of Emily were posted on subway walls, in cafes, in online forums where amateur detectives dissected every pixel of the last known images. Names were floated, discarded, recycled into other cases. Yet the scarf, the alley, the empty street remained untouched by resolution. Then came a man with a bicycle. A delivery rider who frequented the area. He noticed something strange months after Emily disappeared. A pattern in the discarded bottles, the cigarette butts, the seemingly random trash. It was small, almost imperceptible, but in it he sensed a rhythm, an irregularity that called out to someone trained to notice. He called the precinct, mentioning that a particular dumpster near the alley had been moved several times, as if someone had hidden or retrieved something in plain sight. Detectives were skeptical, but every lead had to be considered. They sent forensics teams back to the location. The dumpster, now ordinary, yielded decades-old packaging, but among it, a fragment of fabric that seemed eerily familiar. DNA testing, painstaking and slow, confirmed it. A trace of Emily's blood, dormant, waiting. The discovery reignited the investigation. Cold case units, long accustomed to dust-covered files, became involved. Detective Torres returned to the case, older, tempered by years of unyielding pursuit. She remembered the nights of staring at photos, wondering if Emily's eyes had been closed in a dark room or wide with fear. The scarf, the fragment, the dumpster, all of it now pointed to someone who had operated with precision, someone who had watched the city and waited. Officers re-interviewed neighbors, revisited old witnesses. A landlord remembered a tenant who had left abruptly, a car spotted at odd hours, a van that lingered near the block. Pieces began to fit, but the picture remained incomplete. Emily's friends described her as meticulous, aware of the city's dangers, yet unfailingly optimistic. She had walked alone before, navigated dark streets without hesitation. That someone had succeeded in making her vanish was a horror that resonated deeply with the public. The media latched onto every small revelation. The discarded fragment, the traced DNA, the renewed interviews. Yet with each headline, the city's memory of that cold November night only deepened. How could someone vanish in a place so watched, so alive with motion? That question haunted every precinct officer, every journalist, every citizen who had paused to consider the fragility of life in a metropolis. Then came the unusual witness, the neighbor who had seen flashes of a figure late at night near the alley. At first, her recollections were dismissed as unreliable, distorted by fear and time. But the cold case unit, trained in interpreting memory's quirks, noticed a consistency. The shape of the figure, the cadence of footsteps, the faint metallic glint in the dim streetlight. That observation aligned with patterns discovered in Emily's last known location. The forensic team began reconstructing the timeline, cross-referencing deliveries, traffic logs, even patterns of streetlight outages. Each factor contributed to a digital map of the city's shadows on that night, narrowing down possibilities. Months turned into years. The case remained unresolved, yet the city itself seemed changed. Residents avoided the alley, avoided the memory. The whispers became part of the urban folklore. Cold case boards posted at precincts showed Emily's photo, her eyes staring into the void, a reminder of the consequences of unknown evil. Detective Torres kept a journal of every clue, every half-lead, noting patterns others missed, recognizing the subtle art of someone who understood fear and invisibility. The sense of urgency never waned, even as colleagues retired, even as newer crimes demanded attention. Emily's absence became a lodestar, a reminder that some truths, once buried, demand extraordinary diligence to resurface. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A tip, anonymous, emailed to the cold case unit, claimed knowledge of Emily's fate. The sender described a location, a series of events, details that aligned with evidence only the police had known. It was specific, chilling, convincing. Officers staked out the location discreetly, observing the comings and goings, photographing patterns, documenting routines. And then, the call. Someone had confessed, finally, decades later, to acts that had haunted the city, that had left a family in perpetual mourning, that had defined a block with fear. The confession was chilling in its clarity, detailing movements, the stalking, the capture, the disappearance. It shocked the city, not just because of the admission itself, but because it revealed how close evil could hide, unnoticed, in plain sight. Social media exploded as details emerged. Citizens who had walked those streets years ago suddenly saw them differently, reinterpreting their memories, recalling shadows, fleeting impressions. News anchors recited timelines like incantations, each phrase bringing the horror into sharper focus. Emily's story became a case study in urban disappearance, in the persistence of investigators, and in the unpredictable nature of human confessions. Her family, though finally knowing the truth, was left with an ache that could not be erased, the kind that lingers after closure, when the emotional residue of unresolved fear has seeped deep into the psyche. Through it all, Detective Torres reflected on the nature of cold cases. They were not simply files and cabinets, not merely evidence to be processed. They were living histories, echoing in the hearts of those who remembered, those who pursued justice, and those who feared the unknown. Each minute detail, each overlooked fragment, could hold the key to unraveling mysteries long buried. The city, for its part, absorbed the revelation, the shock, the acknowledgement that darkness can coexist with light, that evil can linger unseen, and that even decades later, resolution, though delayed, can arrive with staggering impact. Emily's scarf, the fragment, the shadows on Rivington Street, symbols now of a truth once hidden, served as a reminder. In a city built on motion and noise, silence can scream, absence can speak, and a cold case, once solved, can still chill the bones of those who remember its story. The city slept uneasily, knowing that behind its neon glow and relentless rhythm, the past waited, patient and watchful, until the moment it could finally be acknowledged. The city seemed to hold its breath as the investigation pivoted from shadows to facts, from speculation to grim certainty. Detective Torres and her team worked tirelessly, retracing Emily Saunders' final steps with the precision of surgeons dissecting a human truth. Every corner, every alley, Every streetlight that had flickered the night she disappeared was scrutinized. Surveillance footage, long forgotten and archived, was pulled from dusty drives, enhanced frame by frame. Faces once blurred into anonymity began to emerge with shocking clarity. The faint reflection of a passerby, the glint of a vehicle in a puddle, the twitch of a shadow. For the first time in years, the city's pulse seemed synchronized with the investigation, each beat marking the slow unearthing of a hidden narrative. Witnesses who had been silent for nearly 2 decades were contacted again. Memories once dulled by time resurfaced with sharp, sometimes painful precision. One elderly man remembered a van parked for hours, engine humming softly, doors locked, lights off, yet someone inside watching the alley as if orchestrating the night. Another neighbor recalled hearing footsteps that were too deliberate, too patterned to be accidental, stopping suddenly and then retreating, leaving an empty silence that carried a weight heavier than any sound. The detectives realized they were piecing together a choreography of fear, a meticulous performance enacted by a predator confident in their invisibility. Evidence that had long seemed inconsequential was reevaluated under new scrutiny. The scarf, previously cataloged and filed away, was now central to understanding the predator's method. Microscopic fibers embedded within its threads suggested a struggle, subtle tears, and impressions that only a trained eye could discern. DNA traces, once thought degraded, were reanalyzed with cutting-edge techniques, revealing a partial profile that hinted at a perpetrator who had moved freely through Emily's life and the city streets. The fragments were like breadcrumbs leading to a truth that had been carefully concealed, and the detectives followed them with relentless focus. The media, sensing a breakthrough, began to stir again, their headlines a mixture of caution and sensation. New York cold case. Movement after 20 years read one. Vanished editor. Clues surfaced decades later read another. Citizens who had once walked past Rivington Street with casual indifference now glanced at the alley with unease, recalling that scarf, those vanished footsteps, the unknown figure that had haunted the block. It became clear that Emily's disappearance had imprinted itself on the collective memory of the city, a shadow that would not lift even with the advent of new generations. The confession that finally broke the case sent shockwaves through every precinct, every newsroom, every apartment where someone remembered Emily. The perpetrator, now in his mid-40s, had maintained a facade of normalcy for years. Neighbors, co-workers, and friends described him as unremarkable, even banal, the kind of person who blends into the urban tapestry so completely that the darkest acts can hide behind a smile. His statement was meticulous, detailing the approach, the capture, the concealment, and the years of unrepentant secrecy. He admitted to following Emily, to selecting that alley specifically because of its isolation, the obscured line of sight, the way streetlights flickered in intervals that would mask his movements. Each word pierced the calm of the city, exposing vulnerabilities no one had anticipated. As Detective Torres listened, she felt a chilling clarity. The confession was not just an admission of guilt. It was a roadmap of terror, revealing how close evil had lurked to ordinary life. For Emily's family, the relief of knowing was intertwined with an ache that words could not capture. Every revelation reopened old wounds, and yet it brought a measure of closure long denied. The city, too, felt the shock, as citizens realized that monsters are not always obvious, that darkness often wears a mask of normalcy, blending seamlessly into the daily rhythm. Reconstruction of that night became an exercise in obsessive detail. Forensic teams walked the alley, measured distances, mapped shadows against the flickering streetlights, analyzed the angles of approaching vehicles, the possible sight lines, the locations where the perpetrator could remain unseen yet in control. They cross-referenced delivery schedules, traffic patterns, even the time street cleaners passed the block. Everything mattered. Every minor detail became a key. Every observation a potential revelation. The city itself seemed to participate in the investigation, yielding secrets that had been hidden in plain sight for years. Emily's co-workers shared insights that at the time seemed trivial, but now illuminated the predator's careful surveillance. She had been working on a controversial story, interviewing sources who hinted at corruption and hidden dealings in local politics. Some suggested that her disappearance might have been more than random, a deliberate act connected to those she was investigating. Others dismissed the idea as coincidence. Yet in retrospect, the timing, the precision, and the stalking patterns hinted at a convergence of motives, an intersection of opportunity and intent that had been invisible to all but the most patient observer. The community's response was intense. Vigils were held, not just to remember Emily, but to process the shock of the confession, to confront the reality that someone who had lived among them for years had harbored such darkness. Citizens shared stories of fleeting impressions, of odd behaviors once dismissed, now reframed in light of new knowledge. Teachers, shopkeepers, taxi drivers, and neighbors all contributed fragments, small observations that, once pieced together, painted a picture both horrifying and strangely coherent. The investigation was no longer just about Emily. It became a study of human perception, memory, and the unseen threats embedded in everyday life. The detective work was relentless. Surveillance cameras, revisited and enhanced, revealed subtle movements. A figure standing at the periphery, glimpses of a reflection in a storefront, a shadow that paused and shifted with unnatural precision. Streetlights, once mundane, were now analyzed for their timing and placement. Investigators simulated the night repeatedly, mapping the predator's likely paths, his approach and retreat, every second choreographed with a predatory understanding of human behavior. The city's landscape, once familiar, now seemed like a stage on which terror had played out with meticulous care. Psychological profiles were drawn. The perpetrator exhibited traits of obsessive control, meticulous planning, and an intimate understanding of his environment. He had studied Emily's habits, her routines, her social patterns, exploiting the predictable rhythms of daily life to orchestrate the perfect disappearance. Interviews with acquaintances revealed nothing unusual at the time, nothing that could have predicted the extent of his obsession. It was the perfect camouflage, a demonstration of how easily the extraordinary can hide within the ordinary. Finally, with the confession in hand, detectives returned to the physical evidence. The scarf, now a symbol of survival and memory, was re-examined. Every fiber, every tear, every smudge of blood was documented, cataloged, and analyzed, revealing the sequence of struggle and concealment with chilling clarity. The alley itself was measured, studied, reconstructed. Everything aligned with the narrative provided by the perpetrator. The timing, the movement, the methodical approach. The case, cold for decades, now had a spine, a structure that had been invisible until the truth was revealed. The city reacted with a mixture of relief and horror. The idea that justice could be achieved after so many years was comforting, yet the nature of the crime left a scar on the communal consciousness. Streets once walked casually were now crossed with caution, and citizens reflected on their own experiences, realizing how little they understood about the dangers lurking in familiar places. Emily's story became a cautionary tale, a narrative passed from neighbor to neighbor, from coworker to coworker, a reminder of the fragility of safety and the persistence of hidden darkness. Detective Torres, in her office, reflected on the long path to resolution. Years of persistence, months of renewed investigation, and a confession that came decades after the act itself combined to form a narrative of relentless pursuit. The city, for all its noise and motion, had finally yielded its secret, but at a cost. Memories of Emily's laughter, her work, her life, mingled with the knowledge of the predator's intent, creating an emotional landscape that was impossible to navigate without acknowledging both tragedy and closure. The confession continued to reverberate through the city's consciousness. Media outlets dissected every detail, community forums buzzed with speculation and reflection, and the memory of Emily Saunders, once a shadow, became vividly real again. Her presence, absence, and the eventual revelation highlighted the thin line between visibility and invisibility in urban life. Every detail of that night, the scarf, the shadows, the footsteps, the meticulous planning, serve as a reminder of the fragility of existence and the vigilance required to protect it. In the aftermath, Emily's family and friends struggled to reconcile relief with grief. Knowing the truth was a double-edged sword. Closure provided peace, yet the horrific details etched a permanent mark. Detective Torres noted that cold cases are not merely solved through evidence. They are resolved through persistence, insight, and an unwavering commitment to the memory of those lost. The city, too, learned a hard lesson, that beneath the hum of daily life, beneath the lights and laughter, darkness can linger, patient and precise, waiting for recognition, and finally, revelation. As the days turned into weeks, the shadow of the case remained. Rivington Street was quiet again, yet the memory of Emily Saunders lingered in every corner, every alley, every flickering light. The confession had solved the mystery, yet the emotional resonance, the haunting implications, continued to ripple through the community. People walked differently, looked more carefully, remembered more vividly. The city had been reminded that even in motion, even in a place as alive and loud as Manhattan, absence and loss could carve deep and lasting impressions. The city's rhythm had not changed, yet felt different. The hum of traffic, the chatter of pedestrians, even the distant wail of sirens carried an undercurrent of memory, a ghostly echo of the night Emily Saunders vanished. Detective Lena Torres walked the streets she had haunted for months, eyes tracing shadows, noting corners and alcoves she had memorized long ago. She could almost hear the whisper of footsteps, the subtle brush of movement against brick and concrete, the muted panic of someone fighting to survive. Every detail mattered, because now, armed with a confession, each fragment could be reconstructed into the story that had eluded them for 20 years. Emily's apartment became a focal point again. Her desk, once cluttered with magazines and notes, now sat as a shrine to what had been lost. Every personal item, every photograph, every scribbled note was scrutinized for clues, for signs the perpetrator had overlooked. Investigators found patterns in her correspondence, subtle references to meetings and interviews that suggested she had sensed danger, perhaps too late to prevent it. It was a chilling reminder that she had not walked into the alley naively. She had been aware, attentive, and yet the predator had been smarter, more patient, more calculating than anyone could have imagined. The confession revealed a level of planning that sent shivers through the precinct. The perpetrator detailed days of surveillance, memorizing her routines, noting when the streets would be empty, when lights would flicker, when witnesses would be absent. He described selecting that alley for its shadows, its limited escape routes, its isolation from the constant bustle of Manhattan. Each step was deliberate, each pause calculated, each move measured to minimize risk and maximize control. Listening to his recounting, Detective Torres felt the weight of understanding, an understanding of human cruelty that few were prepared to face, yet essential to closing the case. The forensic evidence aligned with his story in disturbing precision. Fibers on the scarf matched patterns of struggle. The fragment from the dumpster confirmed the timeline. CCTV footage, once blurry and meaningless, now formed a mosaic that captured glimpses of movement consistent with his account. Investigators reconstructed the night frame by frame, plotting the predator's approach, the brief confrontation, the moment Emily realized the danger before it was too late. The city, which had seemed indifferent, became a canvas of terror, each brick and street lamp bearing silent witness to the events that had unfolded decades ago. Witnesses were re-interviewed with renewed intensity. A shopkeeper remembered a figure standing outside late at night, glancing toward the alley with unusual focus. A taxi driver recalled a passenger who appeared nervous, checking mirrors and windows repeatedly, a subtle unease that he had dismissed at the time. Each recollection, no matter how small, became a thread woven into the larger tapestry of truth. patterns emerged: delivery schedules, street cleaning routes. Even the timing of police patrols were analyzed to understand how the predator had moved undetected. The city's routines, once mundane, were now recognized as factors exploited by someone with chilling patience. Emily's social life, examined under the lens of hindsight, revealed subtle interactions that had seemed normal but now took on ominous significance. Conversations with colleagues hinted at tensions, disagreements over story leads, subtle threats, or warnings she might have received. Interviews with friends revealed fleeting mentions of someone watching, of a feeling of unease, a sense of being followed that had been dismissed as paranoia. Each recollection added depth to the narrative, building a picture of a predator who understood the power of psychological manipulation, who had embedded himself in the ordinary without detection. The community's reaction was intense, a mixture of horror and relief. Residents revisited the alley, now barricaded and under surveillance, reflecting on the invisible danger that had lurked so close. Candlelight vigils returned, this time not only to honor Emily, but to grapple with the revelation of her ordeal. The city's consciousness, long habituated to violence and disappearance, was shaken by the realization that calculated evil can persist, patient and undetected, and that closure, though delayed, carries its own weight of reflection and grief. Media coverage exploded, dissecting the confession with forensic attention. Every detail, from the selection of the alley to the timing of the disappearance, was analyzed and debated. Social media platforms filled with speculation, memories, and new leads from citizens who suddenly recalled incidents long forgotten. The narrative shifted from simple disappearance to a case study in patience, observation, and meticulous crime. Experts were brought in to discuss behavioral patterns, the psychology of long-term predation, the role of urban anonymity in facilitating crime. The story became both a cautionary tale and a testament to investigative persistence. Detective Torres coordinated a meticulous timeline of events. Streetlight outages were mapped, pedestrian patterns charted, vehicle movements reconstructed. Each element was placed like a puzzle piece into a broader understanding of that night. The confession provided the framework. The physical evidence and witness statements filled in the gaps. The narrative of Emily's final hours, once obscured by uncertainty, became a chilling sequence of calculated terror and sudden finality. Investigators felt both satisfaction and a profound unease. Satisfaction in understanding, unease in comprehending the methodical nature of the crime. Emily's family engaged with investigators in painstaking detail. Photos were revisited, documents cross-referenced, memories shared. Every personal item she had touched became a point of connection, a tangible link to the reality of what had happened. While the confession brought answers, it also reopened grief, forcing the family to relive the horror in a controlled but emotionally intense process. The detectives understood that solving a cold case is never just about evidence. It is about restoring fragments of life and memory, however painful that restoration may be. The perpetrator, during interrogation, revealed not only the mechanics of the crime, but also the subtle psychological torment inflicted over time. He described observing reactions, interpreting behaviors, planning interventions to avoid detection, and ultimately executing the abduction with surgical precision. Each admission added layers to understanding, confirming patterns that had been suspected but unprovable. The cold case, once a tangle of uncertainty, was now illuminated by the predator's own words, a terrifying clarity that exposed the depth of premeditation and the fragility of life in an indifferent city. Community forums became repositories of analysis and reflection. Residents shared previously overlooked details: a van parked irregularly, an unfamiliar shadow on a fire escape, footsteps that didn't match any known schedule. These observations, combined with modern technology, allowed detectives to reconstruct the cityscape of 2003 with an unprecedented level of detail. The reconstruction was not just forensic. It was psychological, mapping the predator's thought process alongside Emily's actions, capturing the tension, fear, and fleeting moments of awareness she may have experienced. As weeks passed, the city processed the implications. The revelation that a calculated, patient predator had operated undetected for years forced a re-evaluation of urban safety. Citizens became more vigilant, more conscious of routines, more attuned to subtle anomalies in their environment. The narrative of Emily Saunders shifted from personal tragedy to a collective lesson, a stark illustration of vulnerability and resilience, of the interplay between darkness and human persistence. Detective Torres reflected privately on the nature of closure. The confession had provided facts, timelines, and motivations, but it could not restore what was lost. It could not bring back Emily's laughter, her contributions, her presence. What it could do was impose order on chaos, transform uncertainty into understanding, and allow the city to finally confront a shadow that had lingered for 2 decades. The reconciliation of justice and grief became a complex, emotional calculus, one that would leave an indelible mark on those involved. The reconstruction continued. Forensic specialists recreated the alley under various lighting conditions, simulated pedestrian and vehicle patterns, and compared these with the perpetrator's account. Every movement, every pause, every sound was meticulously mapped. The city, in essence, became a living diagram of terror, a grid where memory, evidence, and confession converged to illuminate the night that had haunted Manhattan for years. Residents who had once dismissed the alley as ordinary now walked past it with a sense of reverence, unease, and reflection, acutely aware of how close danger can lurk in the most mundane settings. Emily's story, now complete in terms of factual resolution, continued to reverberate emotionally. The family, friends, and community grappled with the duality of closure, relief mixed with the enduring ache of absence. Detective Torres understood that cold cases leave lingering echoes. They are not simply solved but absorbed into the consciousness of everyone touched by them. The resolution was not an end, but a transformation, a way to integrate memory, fear, and justice into the ongoing life of a city that thrives on motion yet is haunted by its shadows. Manhattan never truly forgets. The city carries its ghosts like bricks carry their weight, and Emily Saunders became one of those ghosts. Even after the confession, even after the evidence was painstakingly reconstructed, the city pulsed with the memory of her disappearance. Detective Lena Torres walked Rivington Street late at night, the chill biting through her coat, ears straining for the faintest sound of footsteps. Every alley, every fire escape, every flicker of a neon sign reminded her of the predator's meticulous patience. She had walked these streets countless times, but the confession had changed the landscape. Where once there had been uncertainty, now there was knowledge, and knowledge was heavy. The investigation had become an obsession. Every detail of Emily's last day was examined again. The precise timing of her walk home, the rhythm of traffic, the moments she might have glanced over her shoulder. Forensic teams reconstructed the alley in 3D models, measuring shadows, angles, and distances. They ran simulations to determine how the perpetrator had remained undetected, how he had maneuvered, how he had forced control over every second of her disappearance. Each simulation, each reconstruction, revealed the calculated precision of the crime, the kind of patience that seemed almost supernatural. The city itself became part of the evidence, every streetlight and pothole a witness to events long buried. Neighbors, long silent or indifferent, were suddenly voices of memory. An elderly woman recalled hearing muffled sounds in the alley late at night, sounds she had dismissed as a cat or a stray dog. A delivery man remembered a van parked oddly, lights off, engine running, the outline of someone inside. These recollections, seemingly insignificant at the time, now aligned with the confession. Every overlooked detail became vital. Detective Torres felt the weight of each memory, knowing that ordinary citizens had unwittingly been part of the evidence chain all along. The city, unknowingly, had helped preserve the truth until it could finally surface. Emily's apartment remained a shrine to both life and absence, Her desk, notebooks, and personal items were cataloged again. Investigators found patterns in her interactions. Meetings scheduled, emails exchanged, subtle warnings she may have received. Every trace of her presence was scrutinized to understand her awareness of danger, her attempts to navigate life with caution. It became evident that she had sensed something, perhaps a shadow in her routine, a presence she could not quite identify. And yet, despite her awareness, the predator had exploited every vulnerability, orchestrating the abduction with meticulous care. The confession revealed chilling motivations. The perpetrator had selected Emily with deliberation, studying her habits, predicting her movements, exploiting predictable patterns. He described the surveillance in vivid detail, the hours spent observing from shadows, the notes taken on her daily routine, the identification of moments when the streets were empty. He admitted to psychological manipulation, observing her reactions, subtly adjusting his behavior to maintain invisibility. Listening to his words, Detective Torres felt the cold clarity of premeditated evil. Every action had been planned, every risk mitigated, and the result was the vanishing of a life from the heart of a bustling city. The city responded with shock and disbelief. Residents revisited Rivington Street, reflecting on the invisible threat that had lurked for decades. Candlelight vigils returned, this time not just for remembrance, but for collective processing of the revelation. Citizens shared personal observations, fleeting impressions once dismissed as trivial, now understood as fragments of a larger, sinister pattern. The confession had reshaped memory, making ordinary events, vanishing figures, unexplained sounds, fleeting glances, suddenly significant. The city's collective consciousness was altered, haunted by the realization that darkness had operated undetected among them. Media coverage intensified. Every aspect of the confession was analyzed and broadcast. News outlets dissected timelines, behavioral patterns, and forensic evidence. Social media became a repository for memories, speculation, and reflections. Experts in criminal psychology discussed the implications of long-term predation and urban anonymity. The narrative shifted from a simple missing person case to a detailed study of patience, observation, and methodical crime. Emily's story, once a cold case buried in archives, became a lesson in vigilance, awareness, and the persistence of truth. Detective Torres coordinated a precise timeline, mapping every moment of Emily's last day. Streetlight outages were cross-referenced with traffic flow, pedestrian movements reconstructed, vehicle paths analyzed. Each detail fit together like a puzzle. The perpetrator's movements, his stalking, and the execution of the crime became a documented choreography. The city, alive and indifferent at the time, now stood as a witness to the calculated terror, its streets silently acknowledging the events that had transpired decades ago. Psychological analysis provided insight into the predator's mind. Obsessive control, meticulous planning, and an acute understanding of human behavior defined his actions. He had studied Emily, anticipated her responses, and manipulated the environment to maintain control. Interviews with acquaintances revealed nothing suspicious, no indication of the darkness that had unfolded over years. The predator had blended seamlessly into the urban tapestry, hiding in plain sight, executing a crime that would leave an indelible mark on both a family and a city. Emily's family engaged deeply with investigators. Every photograph, every document, every recollection was re-examined. The confession provided answers, yet reopened grief, forcing them to confront the horror of the abduction. Detective Torres understood that resolving a cold case is as much about emotional restoration as it is about evidence. Closure came not as relief alone, but as a complex mix of understanding, memory, and enduring sorrow. The family's journey mirrored the city's, learning to integrate revelation into the ongoing narrative of life. Forensic reconstruction became an obsession. The alley was measured in centimeters, shadows mapped, and sequences of movement simulated. Every angle, every pause, every reaction was documented. The city itself was transformed into a living diagram of terror, a detailed map of actions and consequences. Residents who had once walked casually past the alley now moved with awareness, acutely conscious of the calculated danger that had once existed, yet remained invisible. Community forums became centers of analysis. Citizens shared observations. A van parked irregularly, shadows on fire escapes, footsteps inconsistent with normal schedules. Each contributed to the understanding of events, helping detectives reconstruct not only the timeline, but also the predator's methods. The confession, physical evidence, and community memory converged, illuminating the night that had haunted Manhattan for decades. The narrative of Emily's final hours emerged with chilling clarity, a story of precision, control, and sudden loss. As the case unfolded publicly, the city grappled with its implications. The realization that a patient, calculated predator had operated unnoticed for years shook the collective consciousness. Citizens reconsidered routines, observed patterns more closely, and reflected on vulnerability in the urban environment. Emily's story became both cautionary tale and testament to the dedication of investigators who refuse to allow time to bury the truth. Detective Torres contemplated the nature of closure. Facts, timelines, and motivations had been revealed, yet Emily's absence remained a wound. Her laughter, her life, and her presence could not be restored. Yet the case imposed order on chaos, transformed uncertainty into understanding, and allowed the city to confront a shadow that had lingered silently. Cold cases leave echoes, embedded in memory, in emotion, and in the physical spaces they once occupied. Closure is not an ending, but a transformation of memory into comprehension, grief into understanding, and absence into acknowledgement. The confession continued to reverberate through the city. Media outlets dissected every detail, forums filled with reflections, and citizens shared their own recollections. Emily Saunders, once a shadow, became vividly present in memory. The night of her disappearance was reconstructed in unprecedented detail, illuminating the predator's meticulous planning and the fleeting moments of fear she must have experienced. The city, a living witness, had finally spoken, revealing secrets held for decades, demonstrating that even in motion, even in noise, darkness can persist undetected until revelation occurs. Emily's story, resolved in fact but not in emotional consequence, continued to shape the city. Her family and friends navigated the complex landscape of relief and grief. Detective Torres reflected on the enduring impact of cold cases. They are not simply solved. They are absorbed into consciousness, shaping perceptions, behaviors, and understanding. The revelation of the confession transformed memory, altered awareness, and underscored the delicate balance between life, absence, and justice. The city never truly forgives, and Manhattan, with all its lights and shadows, seemed to hold its breath as the investigation deepened. Detective Lena Torres had spent years navigating alleys, canvassing witnesses, tracing faint echoes of a vanished life. And now, armed with the confession, the city itself became part of the crime scene again. Every lamppost, every cracked pavement, every corner that Emily Saunders had passed through was measured against the predator's meticulous account. The confession was not merely words. It was a blueprint of terror, a detailed map of human behavior exploited with chilling precision. Emily's final day was reconstructed with painstaking care. She had left her apartment at precisely 8:43 p.m., her steps deliberate, her path familiar. The streets, usually teeming with life, had moments of emptiness that the predator had memorized. Delivery trucks had passed, taxis hummed by, pedestrians crossed streets with inattentive eyes, and all of it created a perfect environment for someone patient and calculating. Forensic teams simulated the movement patterns, angles of streetlights, shadows cast on brick and concrete. Every centimeter of Rivington Street was accounted for, revealing how invisibility can be orchestrated in an urban environment. Neighbors were revisited, some long moved away, Some changed, but all held fragments of memory. One elderly shopkeeper recalled a van that appeared in the alley at unusual hours, engine running but lights off, a figure inside observing, waiting, patient. Another remembered muffled sounds, dismissed at the time, now understood as subtle indicators of abduction. Every memory, no matter how faint, was a thread in the web of truth. Detective Torres realized that the city itself had been preserving the story in its ordinary rhythms, its ignored anomalies, until the confession unlocked the pattern. The perpetrator's admissions revealed psychological depth as chilling as his physical precision. He described observing Emily's routines, noting her predictability, exploiting moments when she would be least aware. He had calculated every streetlight flicker, every delivery route, every patrolling officer's schedule. His understanding of human perception and urban rhythm allowed him to remain unseen, unnoticed, and ultimately unstoppable. Listening to his words, Torres felt the heavy weight of understanding human evil. Not just the act, but the deliberate orchestration that made it possible. Emily's apartment was a focal point for renewed investigation. Her desk, notebooks, and personal effects were examined with modern forensic techniques. Emails, schedules, and correspondence revealed subtle tensions and moments of awareness, hints that she may have sensed danger, yet could not pinpoint it. Investigators traced every connection, every meeting, every phone call, assembling a timeline that painted a portrait of a young woman alert, capable, yet vulnerable to a predator who had mastered patience. Each revelation deepened the horror, illustrating the predator's skill in exploiting routine, normalcy, and trust. The confession shocked not only the city, but also the media. Headlines screamed, social media erupted, and citizens shared stories once considered trivial, now reframed in the context of Emily's abduction. The predator's patience, the meticulous surveillance, the psychological manipulation, all were dissected publicly. Experts discussed the nature of long-term predation, the role of urban anonymity, and the vulnerability inherent in predictable patterns. Emily's story, once a cold case archived in obscurity, now became a lesson in vigilance, awareness, and the insidious nature of hidden threats. Detective Torres coordinated the final reconstruction. Streetlight timings, pedestrian flows, traffic schedules, and environmental conditions were simulated repeatedly. Each frame aligned with the confession, confirming the predator's narrative with unnerving accuracy. The city's streets, once familiar, were now transformed into a living diagram of terror, every shadow, every corner a testament to human cunning and vulnerability. Residents who had casually walked past the alley now did so with acute awareness, understanding for the first time how ordinary spaces can harbor extraordinary danger. Psychological profiling added depth to the understanding of the predator. Obsessive control, meticulous planning, and an acute understanding of human behavior defined his actions. Interviews with acquaintances revealed nothing unusual at the time, highlighting the predator's ability to blend seamlessly into everyday life. His facade of normalcy allowed him to operate unnoticed, exploiting routine and trust to orchestrate a crime that would haunt the city for decades. Emily's family faced the duality of closure. The confession provided answers, but reopened grief. They navigated a landscape of relief and pain, integrating knowledge of her fate with the absence that had defined their lives for 20 years. Detective Torres recognized that closure in a cold case is never purely factual. It is an emotional process, reconciling memory, loss, and understanding in the aftermath of revelation. The family's journey mirrored the city's, a process of absorbing truth and transforming fear into comprehension. Forensic reconstruction became increasingly detailed. The alley was examined under multiple lighting conditions, shadows mapped, and sequences simulated. Every movement, pause, and reaction was documented. The city itself was part of the evidence, its physical layout contributing to the understanding of the crime. Residents who had once walked by without thought now did so with awareness, acknowledging the calculated danger that had existed invisibly, yet very real, decades before. Community forums became arenas for shared memory. Citizens recounted observations once dismissed. A van parked oddly, shadows cast on fire escapes, footsteps inconsistent with routine schedules. Each contributed to the understanding of events, helping investigators reconstruct the predator's behavior and Emily's last movements. The confession, physical evidence, and collective memory converged, illuminating the night of her disappearance with chilling clarity, a narrative of precision, fear, and sudden absence. The revelation reshaped the city's consciousness. The understanding that a patient, calculating predator had operated undetected for years forced residents to reevaluate routines, observe patterns, and acknowledge vulnerability in everyday life. Emily's story became a cautionary tale, a lesson in the persistence of human vigilance, and a testament to the relentless pursuit of justice. Her narrative extended beyond her personal tragedy, affecting the collective awareness of a city that prides itself on motion and resilience. Detective Torres contemplated the weight of closure. Facts, timelines, and motivations have been established, yet Emily's absence remained a wound. Her laughter, her presence, her life could not be restored. But the case transformed chaos into understanding, uncertainty into comprehension, and fear into awareness. Cold cases leave echoes, embedded in memory, in emotion, and in the physical spaces they once occupied. Closure does not erase absence. It reframes it, allowing society to reconcile grief, memory, and justice. The confession reverberated widely. Media dissected every detail, forums were filled with analysis, and citizens shared personal recollections. Emily Saunders, once a shadow, became vividly present in memory. The predator's meticulous planning, the fleeting moments of fear, the manipulation of time and space, each revealed in painstaking detail, exposed the depth of the crime and the resilience required to solve it. The city, once indifferent, now stood witness to the interplay of patience, evil, and eventual revelation. Emily's story, factual resolution notwithstanding, continued to resonate emotionally. Family, friends, and community members navigated relief and grief simultaneously. Detective Torres reflected on the nature of cold cases. They are absorbed into consciousness, shaping perceptions, behavior, and understanding. The confession transformed memory, altered awareness, and underscored the delicate balance between life, absence, and justice. The city itself, through its streets and shadows, bore witness to the persistence of truth, the inevitability of revelation, and the haunting weight of what once remained unseen. The city seemed to breathe differently after the confession. Manhattan's lights glimmered over asphalt and steel, yet every glow carried a shadow, a whisper of the night Emily Saunders disappeared. Detective Lena Torres retraced old steps, revisiting Rivington Street with a careful eye, noting the angles of shadows, the intervals between streetlights, the uneven pavements that had once concealed movement. The confession had transformed ordinary streets into a living diagram of terror, revealing how patience, calculation, and observation had turned the city itself into a stage for the predator's meticulous orchestration. Emily's apartment became a hub of forensic reevaluation. Her daily schedule, once routine, was now dissected for clues. Every email, every meeting, every casual observation that had seemed irrelevant now acquired weight. Investigators mapped her movements with precision, noting the precise moments she may have sensed danger, the seconds where routine left her exposed. It became clear that she had been vigilant, yet the predator had anticipated each step, exploiting predictability with the cold efficiency of someone who understood human behavior in its most ordinary forms. Neighbors who had once been overlooked as witnesses were contacted again. A shopkeeper remembered an unfamiliar van parked in the alley, engine running but lights off, a presence that had been invisible yet deliberate. Another neighbor recalled footsteps too patterned to be coincidental, stopping and retreating, leaving only silence and tension. Each recollection, seemingly minor at the time, now became critical evidence, fitting into the narrative of a predator who had meticulously studied the environment, exploiting every nuance to remain undetected. The confession detailed the predator's methods with unsettling clarity. He described studying Emily for weeks, noting routines, calculating streetlight intervals, observing patrol patterns, and mapping exit routes. His patience and attention to detail were frightening. Every observation was logged, every potential interference accounted for, and the result was a disappearance executed with precision. Detective Torres absorbed the confession with a mixture of professional detachment and personal unease, understanding the depth of calculation required to commit such an act while remaining unseen in the heart of a bustling city. Media coverage amplified the revelation. News outlets dissected the confession, providing timelines, maps, and reconstructions. Social media became a platform for shared memory, with citizens recounting seemingly insignificant observations: a flicker in a window, a shadow crossing an alley, a fleeting feeling of unease. These small details, once dismissed, now form part of a collective understanding of the crime. The city's perception of its own streets shifted, recognizing that darkness can persist unnoticed, patient, and precise in ordinary urban landscapes. Detective Torres coordinated a meticulous reconstruction of Emily's last hours. Traffic patterns were analyzed, pedestrian flows simulated, streetlight timings cross-referenced with the confession. Each movement of the predator and victim was mapped, creating a precise timeline that accounted for every second of that night. The city itself became a witness, its infrastructure and routines offering clues to how the crime had been executed with such subtlety and control. Residents who had once walked by casually now viewed familiar streets with newfound awareness, acknowledging the invisible threat that had existed for decades. Psychological profiling illuminated the predator's mind. Obsessive control, meticulous planning, and an intimate understanding of human behavior defined his actions. Interviews with acquaintances revealed no signs of abnormality, emphasizing his ability to blend seamlessly into urban life. He had exploited Emily's predictable routines, the city's rhythms, and the natural inattention of those around him to commit a crime that would remain unsolved for years. Understanding this psychology was crucial to interpreting the confession and reconstructing the events that had haunted Manhattan. Emily's family faced a complex emotional landscape. The confession brought answers, yet reopened grief. They navigated relief and sorrow simultaneously, confronting the reality of her fate while grappling with the permanence of loss. Detective Torres recognized that resolving a cold case is not solely about facts. It involves helping those left behind integrate knowledge, memory, and grief into their ongoing lives. The family's journey mirrored the city's, a process of absorbing truth and transforming fear into comprehension. Forensic teams reconstructed the alley with painstaking detail. Measurements were taken, shadows analyzed, sequences of movement simulated. Every step, pause, and reaction was documented, creating a three-dimensional model of the predator's approach, Emily's movements, and the interplay of urban elements. The city itself was transformed into evidence, each streetlight, fire escape, and pavement crack contributing to the understanding of events. Ordinary spaces became arenas of calculation and danger, revealing the predator's mastery of environment and human perception. Community engagement deepened as forums and social media became repositories of collective memory. Citizens recounted observations previously dismissed: irregularly parked vehicles, shadows in unusual locations, sounds that had gone unnoticed. Each contribution added layers of understanding, helping investigators reconstruct not just the timeline, but the predator's methodical manipulation of space and time. The confession, corroborated by forensic evidence and community memory, illuminated the night Emily vanished, transforming the unknown into a chillingly coherent narrative. The city grappled with the broader implications of the case. The realization that a patient, calculating predator had operated unnoticed for decades prompted reflection on urban vulnerability, routine, and observation. Citizens reconsidered their own daily movements, recognizing that awareness and vigilance are essential, even in familiar environments. Emily's story evolved into a cautionary tale, illustrating the intersection of human behavior, urban anonymity, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Detective Torres contemplated the nature of closure. While the confession and evidence provided factual resolution, Emily's absence remained a profound loss. Her laughter, her presence, her life could not be restored. Yet the case imposed order on chaos, transforming uncertainty into understanding and allowing the city to confront a shadow that had lingered for decades. Cold cases leave echoes that reverberate through memory, emotion, and physical space. Closure is not an ending, but a reframing, allowing society to integrate grief, memory, and justice. The confession continued to reverberate through media, forums, and community discussions. Citizens shared personal recollections, experts analyzed behavioral patterns, and Emily Saunders, once a shadow, became vividly present in collective memory. The predator's meticulous planning, the fleeting moments of fear, and the orchestration of invisibility were dissected in detail, exposing the depth of the crime and the resilience required to bring it to light. The city, a living witness, had finally revealed its hidden narrative, demonstrating that even in constant motion, darkness can persist, patient and precise, until revelation occurs. Emily's story, though resolved factually, continued to affect the emotional landscape of those connected to her. Family, friends, and the community navigated the complex interplay of relief and grief. Detective Torres reflected on the enduring impact of cold cases. They are absorbed into consciousness, shaping perception, behavior, and understanding. The confession transformed memory, altered awareness, and highlighted the fragile balance between life, absence, and justice. The city itself, through streets, shadows, and structures, bore witness to the persistence of truth, the inevitability of revelation, and the haunting weight of unseen events finally acknowledged. The confession had awakened the city. Manhattan, normally a blur of movement and noise, now seemed to hum with memory. Each street and alley a silent witness to events long buried. Detective Lena Torres walked Rivington Street at night, coat collar pulled tight, eyes tracing shadows that had once concealed the predator. Every brick, every flicker of streetlight, every uneven pavement was re-examined in her mind. The confession had transformed ordinary urban spaces into a labyrinth of terror, illustrating how patience, calculation, and acute observation can render even the busiest streets complicit in hiding a crime. Emily Saunders' last hours were reconstructed with painstaking precision. She had left her apartment at exactly 8:43 p.m., walking a familiar route, unaware of the figure tracking her every move. Forensic analysts simulated traffic, pedestrian flows, and environmental conditions to determine the precise moments where her path intersected with the predator's calculated ambush. Every inch of the alley, every shadow cast by a fire escape, every pause in the rhythm of the city became a critical element in understanding how a life could vanish amid the mundane flow of Manhattan nights. Neighbors long silent were re-engaged. A shopkeeper recalled a van idling in the alley with the engine running but lights off, a figure inside scanning the street with deliberate patience. Another remembered muffled sounds, dismissed at the time, now recognized as subtle indicators of abduction. Each recollection, seemingly minor, fit into the predator's narrative, demonstrating how he had manipulated ordinary environments with extraordinary cunning. The city itself, through its overlooked details and forgotten observations, had preserved fragments of truth for decades. The confession unveiled the predator's methodology with chilling clarity. He described weeks of surveillance, memorizing routines, noting streetlight intervals, observing patrol patterns, and mapping escape routes. Every potential interference had been anticipated, every contingency planned. Listening to the confession, Detective Torres felt the heavy weight of understanding. Not just the crime, but the calculated orchestration behind it. The predator had converted the ordinary into a stage, using patience and human predictability to execute a disappearance that would remain unsolved for years. Media coverage amplified the revelation. News outlets provided detailed timelines, maps, and reconstructions, while social media became a repository for collective memory. Citizens recalled small anomalies, a shadow in a window, a fleeting glance, a sound that had gone unnoticed. These minor details, once dismissed, now formed a pattern corroborating the confession. Manhattan's residents began to view their familiar streets differently, aware that darkness can persist undetected, patiently, in the midst of urban chaos. Detective Torres led a meticulous reconstruction of Emily's final movements. Streetlight patterns were synchronized with pedestrian flows and vehicle schedules. Every step, pause, and glance was plotted, creating a timeline that aligned precisely with the confession. The city became a living diagram of the night's terror, where infrastructure, routine, and environment intersected with human malevolence. Residents who had once passed the alley casually now did so with awareness, acknowledging the invisible threat that had existed for decades, hidden in plain sight. Psychological profiling illuminated the predator's mind. Obsessive control, meticulous planning, and an intimate understanding of human behavior defined his actions. Interviews with acquaintances revealed no outward signs of abnormality, underscoring his ability to blend seamlessly into urban life. He had exploited predictable routines, the city's rhythms, and human inattention to commit a crime that would remain unsolved for decades. Understanding this psychology was essential for interpreting the confession and reconstructing Emily's final hours. Emily's family faced the duality of closure. The confession provided answers, yet reopened old wounds. They navigated relief and grief simultaneously, confronting the reality of her fate while grappling with the permanence of absence. Detective Torres recognized that resolving a cold case is not merely about facts. It is about restoring fragments of memory and guiding those left behind through a complex emotional landscape. The family's journey mirrored that of the city itself, integrating knowledge, reconciling grief, and transforming fear into understanding. Forensic teams reconstructed the alley with obsessive attention to detail. Measurements were taken, shadows mapped, and sequences of movement simulated. Each step, pause, and reaction became part of a three-dimensional model illustrating the predator's approach, Emily's responses, and the interplay of urban elements. The city, once ordinary, was now a testament to the predator's mastery of environment and human perception. Spaces that had once seemed mundane now revealed the hidden precision of terror. Community forums became centers of collective memory. Citizens recounted observations previously dismissed. A van parked oddly, shadows on fire escapes, footsteps inconsistent with routine schedules. Each contributed to understanding the predator's methods and Emily's final movements. The confession, combined with forensic evidence and community recollections, illuminated the night she disappeared, transforming uncertainty into a chillingly coherent narrative. The revelation reshaped Manhattan's consciousness. The awareness that a patient, calculating predator had operated undetected for decades prompted citizens to reconsider their routines, observe patterns more closely, and acknowledge the inherent vulnerability in urban life. Emily's story became a cautionary tale, demonstrating the delicate balance between vigilance, trust, and the persistence of truth. The narrative extended beyond personal tragedy, shaping collective awareness and urban perception. Detective Torres reflected on the nature of closure. While the confession and evidence provided factual resolution, Emily's absence remained an enduring loss. Her laughter, her presence, her life could not be restored. Yet the case imposed order on chaos, transforming uncertainty into understanding and allowing the city to confront a shadow that had lingered for decades. Cold cases leave echoes that persist in memory, emotion, and physical space. Closure reframes absence, integrating grief, memory, and justice. The confession continued to reverberate. Media outlets dissected details, forums buzzed with recollections, and citizens shared personal observations. Emily Saunders, once a shadow, was vividly present in collective memory. The predator's meticulous planning, fleeting moments of fear, and manipulation of space and time were examined in depth, revealing both the depth of the crime and the resilience required to bring it to light. Manhattan, a living witness, had revealed its hidden narrative, demonstrating that even in constant motion, darkness can persist until revelation occurs. Emily's story, though resolved factually, continued to affect the emotional landscape. Family, friends, and community navigated the interplay of relief and grief. Detective Torres reflected on cold cases. They are absorbed into collective consciousness, shaping perception, behavior, and understanding. The confession transformed memory, altered awareness, and highlighted the fragile balance between life, absence, and justice. The city itself, through streets, shadows, and structures, bore witness to the persistence of truth, the inevitability of revelation, and the haunting weight of events once unseen. The night air carried a chill that felt almost sentient, as if Manhattan itself remembered Emily Saunders. Detective Lena Torres moved along the streets with deliberate caution, eyes scanning alleys, fire escapes, and the shadows cast by flickering streetlights. The confession had rendered the ordinary cityscape into a theater of terror, each element of the urban environment suddenly significant, each movement, sound, and shadow a clue to the precision of a long-hidden crime. Years of uncertainty had crystallized into a narrative of calculated horror, exposing both the predator's meticulous planning and the fragility of routine in a city that never sleeps. Emily's last movements were reconstructed with painstaking attention. She left her apartment at 8:43 p.m., carrying a sense of familiarity, unaware of the eyes tracking her from concealed vantage points. Investigators simulated traffic, pedestrian patterns, and environmental conditions to identify the exact moments when the predator could act without detection. Every shadow, every uneven pavement, every pause in her steps became a vital point in understanding how a life could be erased amid the ordinary rhythm of Manhattan. The city itself, alive with motion, had unwittingly been complicit in hiding the truth. Witnesses long overlooked were revisited. An elderly shopkeeper recalled a van that had lingered in the alley, engine running, lights off, a silent observer scanning the streets with intent. Another neighbor remembered faint noises, which had once been dismissed as the city's hum, now understood as subtle indicators of the abduction. Each recollection, seemingly minor, fit into the confessional narrative, revealing the predator's mastery of observation and control. The city's fabric, through these overlooked details, preserved fragments of truth that finally converged into clarity. The predator's methodology, revealed in the confession, was chilling in its precision. Weeks of surveillance, memorization of routines, observation of streetlight intervals, and careful mapping of patrol routes were all accounted for. Every potential interference was anticipated, every contingency planned. Detective Torres listened with a mixture of professional detachment and visceral unease, recognizing the deliberate orchestration behind the disappearance. The predator had transformed ordinary urban spaces into instruments of control, exploiting patience and predictability to erase a life without detection. Media coverage intensified, dissecting every detail of the confession. News outlets presented reconstructed timelines, maps, and simulations, while social media became a repository for collective memory. Citizens recounted fleeting impressions, shadows and windows, unfamiliar glances, muted sounds, previously dismissed as trivial. These minor observations, now significant, corroborated the confession and transformed the city's perception of itself. Manhattan, accustomed to motion and noise, now acknowledged that darkness could persist, patient and precise, hidden in plain sight. Detective Torres orchestrated a meticulous reconstruction of Emily's final hours. Streetlight intervals, pedestrian flows, and vehicle movements were synchronized with the confessor's account. Every movement, every pause, and every reaction was plotted with precision, creating a timeline that revealed how the predator maneuvered and executed the crime. Manhattan became a living diagram of terror, where environmental factors, human behavior, and malevolent intent intersected to orchestrate a disappearance that had haunted the city for decades. Psychological profiling deepened the understanding of the perpetrator. Obsessive control, meticulous planning, and acute perception of human behavior defined his actions. Interviews with acquaintances revealed no outward abnormality, highlighting his ability to blend seamlessly into the urban landscape. He had exploited predictable routines, the city's rhythms, and human inattention to commit a crime that would remain unsolved for decades. Understanding this psychology was critical for reconstructing Emily's final moments and interpreting the confession's chilling details. Emily's family faced a complex emotional landscape. The confession provided factual closure but reopened emotional wounds. They navigated relief and grief simultaneously, confronting the reality of her fate while grappling with the permanence of absence. Detective Torres understood that resolving a cold case is not merely about evidence. It is about guiding those left behind through the intricate interplay of memory, grief, and understanding. The family's journey mirrored the city's process, integrating truth, reconciling fear, and transforming loss into comprehension. Forensic teams reconstructed the alley with obsessive precision. Measurements, shadow mapping, and movement simulations created a three-dimensional model of the predator's approach, Emily's movements, and the interplay of urban elements. Manhattan itself became evidence, its infrastructure and layout revealing how the predator had exploited environment and perception. Spaces once considered ordinary now disclosed the hidden mechanics of terror, illustrating the predator's calculated manipulation of seemingly mundane surroundings. Community engagement intensified. Citizens contributed to forums, social media, and interviews, recalling observations previously dismissed: irregularly parked vehicles, shadowy figures on fire escapes, incongruent footsteps. These memories were woven into the reconstruction, helping investigators map the predator's movements and Emily's final actions. The confession, combined with physical evidence and collective memory, illuminated the night of her disappearance, transforming decades of uncertainty into a chillingly coherent narrative of observation, control, and loss. The city wrestled with the implications of the case. The realization that a patient, calculating predator had operated undetected for years prompted reflection on urban vulnerability and the importance of observation. Residents reconsidered routines, scrutinized familiar streets, and acknowledged the fragility of safety in ordinary environments. Emily's story became a cautionary tale, emphasizing vigilance, awareness, and the persistence of truth. The narrative extended beyond individual tragedy, reshaping collective consciousness and urban perception. Detective Torres contemplated the nature of closure. While evidence and confession provided factual resolution, Emily's absence remained profound. Her laughter, her presence, her life could not be restored. Yet the case imposed order on chaos, transforming uncertainty into understanding and allowing the city to confront a shadow that had persisted for decades. Cold cases leave echoes in memory, emotion, and the physical world. Closure reframes absence, integrating grief, memory, and justice into the ongoing life of those affected. The confession reverberated through media, forums, and community conversations, Citizens shared recollections, experts analyzed behavioral patterns, and Emily Saunders, once a shadow, became vividly present in collective memory. The predator's meticulous planning, manipulation of space and time, and the fleeting moments of terror were dissected in detail, revealing the depth of the crime and the resilience required to bring it to light. Manhattan, a living witness, revealed its hidden narrative, demonstrating that even in motion and noise, darkness can persist until it is illuminated by revelation. Emily's story, resolved factually but not emotionally, continued to affect the city. Family, friends, and community members navigated the interplay of relief and grief. Detective Torres reflected on the nature of cold cases. They are absorbed into collective consciousness, shaping perception, behavior, and understanding. The confession transformed memory, heightened awareness, and underscored the delicate balance between life, absence, and justice. The city itself, through streets, shadows, and structures, bore witness to the persistence of truth, the inevitability of revelation, and the haunting weight of events that had remained unseen for decades. Manhattan held its breath as the confession settled into the city's collective memory. Detective Lena Torres walked along Rivington Street with heightened awareness, noting the flicker of neon lights against brick walls, the subtle shifts in shadow, the faint hum of distant traffic. Every element of the urban landscape now carried significance. Every overlooked corner or alleyway a potential witness to long-hidden terror. The confession had transformed the ordinary into extraordinary evidence, turning the city itself into a canvas of the predator's meticulous orchestration, and every step Torres took felt like navigating a labyrinth of calculated darkness. Emily Saunders' last hours were dissected with a precision that bordered on obsession. Investigators recreated her route from apartment to alley, noting the exact time of departure, her pace, her posture, even the slight hesitation at familiar corners. Pedestrian movements, taxi routes, streetlight intervals, and environmental conditions were simulated to pinpoint the moments where the predator could intervene without detection. Each detail, from the curve of a sidewalk to the angle of a fire escape shadow, revealed how the predator had exploited the ordinary rhythms of city life to execute a disappearance that would remain unsolved for decades. Neighbors who had long been considered peripheral witnesses were revisited. The elderly shopkeeper who had noticed the van lingering in the alley, engine running but lights off, provided critical detail about the predator's patience. Another resident recalled faint, muffled sounds, once dismissed as ordinary city noise, now understood as indicators of abduction. These seemingly insignificant observations, when combined with the confession, revealed the predator's skill in blending into the environment and manipulating perception. Manhattan itself had preserved fragments of truth in its overlooked details, now converging into a coherent narrative. The predator's confession detailed weeks of surveillance, memorization of routines, observation of streetlight cycles, and strategic mapping of patrol schedules. Every potential interruption was anticipated, every scenario planned, demonstrating a level of calculation that sent chills through the investigation team. Detective Torres absorbed the confession with a mixture of professional detachment and visceral unease, recognizing the depth of foresight and control required to commit such a crime undetected. The ordinary cityscape had become a stage for extraordinary manipulation, revealing how easily routine and predictability can be weaponized by patience and cunning. Media coverage magnified the revelation. News outlets published detailed timelines, maps, and visual reconstructions, while social media platforms became hubs for shared memory. Citizens recounted fleeting impressions, a shadow moving in a window, a glance from a stranger, a muffled sound, previously dismissed, now critical. These minor details validated the confession, transforming Manhattan's perception of itself. The city, accustomed to motion, noise, and anonymity, now recognized the persistence of hidden danger, patient, precise, and concealed in plain sight. Detective Torres oversaw a meticulous reconstruction of Emily's final moments. Streetlight intervals, pedestrian flows, and vehicle movements were cross-referenced with the confession to create a step-by-step timeline. Every movement, pause, and glance was plotted to reveal the predator's methodical execution and Emily's final actions. Manhattan became a living diagram of fear, where the intersection of human behavior, environmental factors, and calculated malice orchestrated a disappearance that had haunted the city for years. Psychological profiling illuminated the predator's mindset. Obsessive control, meticulous planning, and acute observation defined his actions. Interviews with acquaintances revealed no outward signs of abnormality, highlighting his ability to blend seamlessly into urban life. By exploiting predictable routines, the city's inherent anonymity, and ordinary human inattention, he orchestrated a crime that remained unsolved for decades. Understanding this mindset was crucial for interpreting the confession and reconstructing Emily's final hours with precision. Emily's family confronted a complex emotional landscape. The confession provided closure, yet reopened old wounds. Relief and grief coexisted as they faced the stark reality of her fate, integrating the knowledge of what had occurred with the void of her absence. Detective Torres recognized that solving a cold case involves more than evidence. It requires guiding those left behind through memory, grief, and understanding. The family's process mirrored the city's, integrating truth into the fabric of everyday life while reconciling fear, sorrow, and memory. Forensic teams reconstructed the alley with obsessive detail. Measurements, shadow mapping, and movement simulations created a three-dimensional model of the predator's approach, Emily's movements, and the interaction with urban elements. Manhattan itself became evidence, its streets, fire escapes, and pavement cracks revealing how the predator had exploited perception and environment. Ordinary spaces revealed hidden mechanics of control and fear, demonstrating the predator's skill in manipulating the urban landscape to commit a crime undetected. Community engagement intensified. Residents contributed observations previously dismissed. Oddly parked vehicles, shadowed fire escapes, footsteps that seemed out of rhythm with the city's usual flow. These memories were integrated into the reconstruction, assisting investigators in mapping both the predator's methodical movements and Emily's responses. The confession, physical evidence, and collective memory converged, illuminating the night of her disappearance with chilling clarity, transforming uncertainty into a coherent and terrifying narrative. The city grappled with the implications. The realization that a patient, calculating predator had operated undetected for decades prompted reflection on urban vulnerability and human behavior. Residents reevaluated their routines, scrutinized familiar streets, and acknowledged the fragility of safety in everyday life. Emily's story became a cautionary tale, emphasizing vigilance, awareness, and the persistence of truth. Her narrative extended beyond personal tragedy, shaping collective consciousness and altering the perception of urban space. Detective Torres reflected on closure. While the confession and evidence provided factual resolution, Emily's absence remained a profound loss. Her laughter, presence, and life could not be restored. Yet the case imposed order on chaos, transforming uncertainty into understanding, allowing the city to confront a shadow that had lingered for decades. Cold cases leave echoes, resonating through memory, emotion, and the physical environment. Closure does not erase absence. It reframes it, integrating grief, memory, and justice into the ongoing lives of those affected. The confession reverberated through media, forums, and community discussions. Citizens shared memories, experts analyzed behavioral patterns, and Emily Saunders, once a shadow, became vividly present in collective consciousness. The predator's meticulous planning, manipulation of space and time, and the fleeting moments of terror were dissected, revealing both the depth of the crime and the perseverance required to bring it to light. Manhattan, a living witness, exposed its hidden narrative, demonstrating that even in constant motion and noise, darkness can persist until illuminated by revelation. Emily's story, though resolved factually, continued to affect the city emotionally. Family, friends, and community navigated the interplay of relief and grief. Detective Torres reflected on the enduring impact of cold cases. They are absorbed into collective consciousness, shaping perception, behavior, and understanding. The confession transformed memory, heightened awareness, and underscored the delicate balance between life, absence, and justice. Manhattan itself, through streets, shadows, and structures, bore witness to the persistence of truth, the inevitability of revelation, and the haunting weight of events once unseen. The confession had sent ripples through Manhattan that seemed to linger in the very air. Detective Lena Torres moved through the streets with a heightened awareness, tracing the familiar lines of Rivington Street and its alleys, noting shadows cast by flickering streetlights and the uneven pavements where Emily Saunders had walked decades before. Every brick, every stairwell, every fire escape now felt imbued with significance, each element of the cityscape a silent witness to the meticulous orchestration of a crime long hidden. The confession had turned ordinary streets into corridors of terror, revealing how patience, calculation, and observation could transform the urban landscape into a stage for disappearance. Emily's last evening was reconstructed in meticulous detail. She left her apartment at 8:43 p.m., her pace steady, unaware of the eyes following her from concealed vantage points. Traffic patterns, pedestrian flows, and environmental conditions were simulated to identify the exact moments when the predator could act without detection. Each element, the angle of a streetlight, the flicker of neon reflecting off wet pavement, the slight hesitation in Emily's step at a familiar corner, was scrutinized. Manhattan, vibrant and indifferent at the time, had become a critical part of the crime scene, preserving the contours of terror until revelation. Neighbors, long considered peripheral, were revisited. The elderly shopkeeper who recalled the van idling silently in the alley provided critical testimony about the predator's patient observation. Another resident remembered muffled sounds, once dismissed as ambient city noise, now recognized as subtle indicators of the abduction. These details, seemingly trivial, aligned with the confession, exposing the predator's ability to manipulate environment and perception. The city itself, through overlooked anomalies, had preserved fragments of truth for decades, now converging into a coherent narrative. The confession revealed the predator's methods with chilling clarity. Weeks of surveillance, memorization of routines, observation of streetlight cycles, and mapping of patrol schedules were all described in detail. Every potential interruption was anticipated, every scenario calculated. Detective Torres listened with a combination of professional detachment and visceral unease, recognizing